Chris. There we go. All right, hi everyone. I'm Beth. I'll be one of the hostesses for the evening, and so happy to see all your smiling faces. So for those of you who have your videos on, good to see you. You're in for a treat this evening. There's a lot of great information that's going to come your way. So to help us get acquainted with this Zoom platform, I'll ask that you find the chat. So it should be at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. So bring up the chat and type in where you're calling in from this evening. It's kind of fun to see just how spread out we might be, because I'm actually calling in from Appleton, Wisconsin. So if you're able to find the chat, go ahead and plop that in there. I figured we'd have a lot of Duluth, a couple Superior. Yep, absolutely. Excellent. And then just a few housekeeping notes for you. If you have any technical issues, feel free to type those into the chat as well, and we'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll help you out best we can. And as far as questions go, if you have any really in-depth questions, we'll ask that you hold those for the very end. We'll have a Q&A session to wrap up the evening. But if you have a clarifying question for one of the presenters, feel free to type that into the chat. Each one of them will have a few minutes at the end of their segment to tackle those questions. So give me a thumbs up if that sounds like a good plan. Looking for thumbs. Yep. Thank you. All right.
Everybody know how to find the reactions at the bottom there? Do you want to explain that, Beth?
I was going to say, I was looking for like a live thumbs up, but there are actual, there are virtual thumbs up. Thanks for the reminder, Chris. At the bottom in that toolbar, you'll find reactions. So you should be able to find a thumbs up there. You can put a thumbs up in the chat. That's perfect. And then if you open your participant box, you can also raise your hand out there. But again, if you have any questions for now, you can just pop those right into the chat. And then just an FYI, if I see that you're unmuted, I'm going to go ahead and mute you just to make sure we don't have any background noise. So if you find yourself being muted, that's why. All right. So let's move right along here and get right into the program. So our first speaker tonight is Rick Guitar, and he has worked for the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Chippewa since 1998. And he's been a wetland specialist and a water regulatory specialist. And he's represented Fond du Lac in the AOC since 1999 in various capacities, including Habitat Committee Chair, SLRA board member, and since 2011, the AOC coordinator for Fond du Lac. So welcome, Rick.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to give you the progress in the St. Louis River AOC since October 2020, and then some upcoming work that's coming. I'm waiting for control.
Oh, I gave it. You might have to request it again. Let's give it one more try.
No.
All right, go ahead and try moving the mouse. Here, I'll go back to the previous screen. Okay, there you go. Okay, I see you moving it.
Okay, there we go. So some important acronyms that you will be seeing in this presentation. We have, of course, the Area of Concern AOC. BUI is a beneficial use impairments. We have the Clean Water Fund, which is one of the sources of funding. Cubic yards, Fond du Lac. GLRI is an important source of funding. Harbor Tech Maintenance Trust Fund is funding. Million. Minnesota DNR. MPCA is Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Natural resources damage assessment is also a source of funding in some projects. Outdoor Heritage Fund is the funding. Of course, the St. Louis River Alliance, SLRA, United States Army Corps of Engineers, United States Environmental Protection Agency, and the Minnesota DNR. Some great resources in the AOC can be found at Minnesota DNR, MPCA, Wisconsin DNR, and SLRA websites. And of course, SLRA also has lots of great social media posts. Minnesota and Wisconsin also have Gov delivery notices and story maps for a habitat restoration contaminated sediment remediation project can be found at this website. So management actions. Thus far, as of September 30th, 2021, we are at 59% of all management actions completed or no further action is necessary. Of course, management actions are the tasks that we need to complete to remove each beneficial use impairment. This is our updated status map of the projects. The red is remedial actions that are proposed or are being worked on. Purple is the remedial actions or restoration that have been complete. And the light green is the restoration projects that are underway or are planned. And the very dark green that you can see over in this area is the wild rice plantings. Now this wild rice map or this map will be in our outreach materials and in the 2020 wrap update. The Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement identifies 14 beneficial use impairments that pertain to the Great Lakes AOCs. The St. Louis River AOC has 9 of them. When all the management actions for a BUI are complete, we can prepare a removal package for that BUI. 3 are done and 1 is slated for next year. The remainder can't be removed until all the remediation, restoration, construction projects are complete. Our goal is to complete our construction management actions by 2024. When all the BUIs are removed, we can apply for delisting. There is no EPA requirement for when AOCs are delisted. The delisting process can't start until all the BUIs are removed. There are many external factors beyond our control that affect progress, such as technical feasibility of proposed remediation and restoration alternatives, adequate state and federal funding, timely cooperation from local, state, and federal partners and landowners, public acceptance of the proposed work, and construction seasons that are not curtailed by bad weather. Now, this Interstate Island project, restoration project, I will not cover because there will be a presentation coming up that will cover that in much more detail. Ponds Behind the Erie Pier is currently underway to remove 45,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediments. As of this date, I'm told that approximately 7,000 cubic yards have been removed thus far. For this project, approximately 100,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediments are within this area. 95% design is currently being worked on. A EAW is out on public notice at this time. Construction is hoped to be between 2022 and 2023. One of the responsible parties is Viacom CBS. It's actually Viacom CBS is a parent company of what was once Westinghouse, who had a facility in Smithville. Scanlon Reservoir, approximately 60,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediments with dioxins and furans is at this facility. The Thompson Reservoir was just issued the award for design to Arcadis. The target construction for that project is 2023. The AGP Northland Slip was on hold until DSPA decides what they'll do with their adjacent property. For the Wisconsin remediation actions, lots of progress in the last year due to Wisconsin DNR remediation and redevelopment. Clough Island wetland, they determined that no further action is needed at that project. And Howard's Bay remediation is currently underway with dredging and construction to be completed by 2022. Kingsbury Bay restoration is actually a joint project along with Grassy Point, with a total of $18 million spent at both projects. The project here is listed as substantially complete for the project status, but I just received a notice from one of the project leads that they have just completed all of the project work under this funding. Grassy Point as well. Here they had a lot of sawmill waste that they used to create this island. The 21st Avenue West and 40th Avenue West projects are substantially complete, with only biomedium application to be placed at 40th Avenue West in 2022. US Steel Spirit Lake project is one of the largest projects on the AOC. The redesign is underway to reduce costs due to a high bid on the project. EPA is posting regular progress updates on their St. Louis River AOC website. The funding total will increase, but the higher amount has not yet been determined. And work is ongoing at this time. The Birch Lake restoration, the design is currently in progress. One of the main features is to add this additional culvert so that water can circulate through this open area, that they will open up more deeper water so that water can circulate through this area. So as I said, it's currently in design progress. Construction is hoped to be complete by 2023. Mud Lake is, the design is hoped to be completed by 2022 with construction sometime complete by 2024. Again, there's a railroad causeway that goes through this area separating Mud Lake West from Mud Lake East, and there's only one flow path right now, but the design is to put an additional flow area up here to the north to allow a circulation of flow. Little Balsam Creek, phase one has been completed, which I believe replaced 3 locations of perch culverts. So you can see the before and then the after. Phase 2 is in design right now. Design is to be completed sometime in spring of 2022 with construction following soon afterwards. Pickle Pond is a small water area between the railroad tracks and the highway area near Barker's Island to remove contaminated sediment there. The design is at over 75%, and the DNR, City of Superior, and BNSF Railroad are negotiating land transfer and moving forward with a 90% design soon. The public outreach is planned this winter with usage surveys conducted by US EPA pre and post project. And you can see the website here for that survey. Well, rice restoration has been ongoing for several years now with the establishment of 75 acres of 275 acres of self-sustaining wild rice. This past year, the fund lack due to the low water conditions, due to the drought, it was difficult to obtain wild rice because it was difficult to harvest wild rice. So they weren't able to get as much rice as they were hoping for. So the AOC effort to better define the wild rice plan will be updated this winter in 2021. NRDA funds begin to be used at Kingsbury starting in 2022 and may also post AOC sites in 2024. Some of the partners at Fond du Lac Band, of course, has been doing all of the seeding for this project. 1854 Treaty Authority has been doing the monitoring for it. The SLRAOC has been doing quite a bit of seeding around Clough Island, and this year they did seeding around in Kingsbury Bay. Of course, we don't just walk away from a restoration site after we do the restoration. We are also doing post-construction sampling. to make sure that the site is becoming viable. And phase one sampling has been completed. You can see that we've had over 1,000 vegetation sampling sites and over 700 bug stations. Phase two, we're going to be adding an additional over 600 vegetation stations and over 300 bug stations for the sampling. So fish consumption advisories, we collected additional data in 2021, 42 mercury sites and 35 TCB sites. And after data analysis, the results will be shared in 2022. I won't go on with the SLRA efforts because I believe Chris is going to be covering those a lot more in detail than I can. And so that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rick. A lot of great information there. So we're gonna bring up a poll. As we do that, if anyone does have any questions, feel free to type those into the chat. But let's go ahead and bring up a polling question. So I'm gonna bring that up for us. All right. So I just launched the poll. Hopefully you can all see that.
I can't see it yet.
See, people are voting. You know what? As a co-host, Chris,
Okay.
you might not see it.
Okay.
But yeah, so we'll give everyone just a minute or so to answer that question. I see we've got quite a few answers coming in already. So the question, how do you prefer to learn about the SLRAOC projects and progress? So 4 different answers here for us. So traditional media, newspaper, TV, radio, social media posts, Twitter, Facebook, Insta, various websites, or in-person events, on the water events, public gatherings, that kind of thing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because we've got everybody answered. Let's go ahead and share the results. So websites, websites and in-person events are both looking like good ways to learn about those projects. Okay. So looking at the notes in the chat here, a couple of thanks coming in for the information, Rick. So thank you for that. And then I see Barb posted some more information. And if you haven't been looking at the chat, there are a couple of links out there to some good resources. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the poll here. Okay. All right. My poll is not leaving my screen. I may have to. Oh, there we go. You know what? Sorry, I've got a poll covering what I'm looking at here. I'm going to try to get rid of this poll really quick. Then we can go ahead and move. Haha, there we go. Move on. Perfect. So we are going to bring Chris back in. Chris is the executive director of the St. Louis River Alliance. So I'm going to hand it on over to Chris. Welcome again, Chris.
Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Beth. We're so lucky to have you with us. And I just want to say a couple of things about the St. Louis River Alliance. For those of you who don't know, we are the original Citizens Action Committee that started back when the EPA designated the St. Louis River Estuary an area of concern, and it was required as part of the process from the EPA. And so after that was going for a while, we just decided to stick around for a while, and we're still here connecting the general public to the process. And we're also working on some habitat projects. And I'm just going to go through quick, and I don't seem to have control. It says I have control, but I don't have, oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done this last year. And as a nonprofit, we have some contracts with some of the agencies who are here tonight. And so I'm just going to talk about some of the responsibilities that we had with those contracts. So first of all, the SLRA has its regular annual events, and this year we were actually able to do a couple of them after spending a whole year not having any in-person events. We had a spring cleanup, and we took a bunch of people came out, and we went up. You can see we went by Target at the Miller Creek there. It was really, really dirty. So we had about 15-20 people show up for that and clean up the creek. And then in August, we had our annual canoe and kayak trip, and we just had a blast. We had to change our plans at the last minute. We put in at Woodstock Bay in Superior, and we had just a great group. We had to stay in one of the fingers of the Woodstock Bay because it got really, really super windy, and we just had a blast, and we canoed back in that bay. We were able to see some otters right away, and there's some eagles, and I think everybody was just super happy to be together again. So that was really nice. We have a contract with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and in that contract this last year, we had a Vista Star boat tour, which we've done many years now, and we had about 84 people come on board. We kept it at about half capacity just to keep things a little bit more roomy, so we had enough room for people to be outside. We had some amazing weather with the rainbows showing up and a few rain showers. And we also started running the photo contest this year, and we advertised it back in January because we wanted people to enter some winter photos, and we just ended it now. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that later because we're going to announce the winners of that contest. And the Celebration of Progress is another event that we hold on behalf of the agencies to connect the citizens to the process. And we also do some engagement and updates in social media as well. And I'm just going to do a little video here about the National Water Trail.
At the headwaters of Lake Superior lies the nation's largest freshwater estuary. Flowing between Wisconsin and Minnesota, the St. Louis River Estuary has a rich history. Unfortunately, due to unregulated industrial dumping, by the 1970s, the St. Louis River was considered one of the most polluted waterways in the United States. After decades of work by agencies, the river is now slowly and painstakingly being restored to health. The National Water Trail Project is a direct result of a cleaner river. It celebrates the slow return of vitality, giving people access to recreate and reconnect to the river once again. The St. Louis River Estuary National Water Trail was designed under the direction of the City of Duluth and over 50 partners. It is not a linear trail, but a series of loops for different skill levels and various watercraft. By providing access to wild spaces in an urban area, the water trail enables more people an opportunity to build their own memories and relationships to this unique treasure. The St. Louis River Alliance is a membership organization of river stewards working together to restore, protect, and enhance the St. Louis River. As proud managers of the water trail, the Alliance is leading a working group of representatives from Minnesota and Wisconsin to ensure its success. There is much work to do in order to make this water trail a popular destination, and the St. Louis River Alliance is making it a top priority. The St. Louis River Estuary Water Trail will lead you to untapped wild spaces just waiting to be explored. Support the Water Trail by becoming a member today.
So I bring that up because we are the managers for the Water Trail. And so some of the things we've done in this last year is continue to celebrate the designation, the national designation that happened last year about in October. We worked on some map distribution. We created some movie clips with one of our interns that we had this last summer, and we conducted advisory council meetings to facilitate the master plan. And we also did a bunch of presentations to bring awareness to the Water Trail. And so you can find more information out about that on our website. But we've got a little sample of the Fond du Lac loop. It's called the Fond du Lac Voyage, and you can look at the map where this goes. That's just kind of fun to see a little snippet of some fast motion paddling there. So for more information on that, you can look on our website. One of our contracts we also had was for the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And like Rick mentioned, we did some wild rice planting at Kingsbury Bay this year because we were able to get some seed, and we did about 500 pounds there all total. And we did that this year because Kingsbury Bay was newly restored and they wanted to get something in there before other plants got established. We also have another contract with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources doing site maintenance on the piping plover habitat in Wisconsin, on Wisconsin Point. And we had a group of UMD students come out and do some woody debris removal and pull some unwanted vegetation by hand. And we also are responsible for site assessments there and just making sure that the habitat is where it needs to be for piping plover. We have a contract through U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that we've had ongoing grants from them since 2011, actually, to work on piping plover monitoring. So this year we focused mostly on the Wisconsin Point site, where the Wisconsin DNR had done most of their some really great habitat work. And we did some monitoring on Minnesota Point again. And on Wisconsin Point in the new habitat, one female was observed over 3 days in May, which is awesome. There was not a male there for it to breed with, but we are still happy to see a female because it's been a while since we have seen a female. This bird in particular was captive raised last summer from an egg that was salvaged from a very late nest with some first-year adults that was abandoned. And so it was released in August near the south boundary of Sleeping Bear Dunes. So we are able to keep track of these birds because they are banded. So that about wraps up. We do a lot of other work as well, but those are the contracts that we had, and we're still here to make sure that the public is connecting with the river. And right now we're having a sustainability drive now through December 14th. So you can jump on our website and find out more information about that. So thanks, Beth.
Wow, a lot of great stuff. Thanks for the updates, Chris. I wanted to say, Chris has been, so instrumental to this organization. She's been the executive director since 2015, and her passion for this really comes through. So, really want to, give you a shout out and say that that's very appreciated, Chris. All right, let's bring up another poll question. So get ready to vote, everyone. All right, so our second poll, I'm going to go ahead and launch this. So think about, in the next year, how would you prefer to attend events? virtual only, virtual, in-person, kind of a hybrid, given a choice, or in-person preferred. I know we're all eager to get back to doing lots of things together in person, also respecting everyone's comfort level. Okay, so watching the votes come in here. We've got about 70% of everyone voted. So if you haven't voted yet, we'd love to get your opinion on this. So we'll keep this poll open for a few more moments. Okay. Well, the voting has slowed down. I'm going to give you one last option, one last chance to vote, and then I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here and launch the results. Okay. So most people, about 70% of those who responded, prefer a virtual and in-person hybrid kind of model, which is kind of nice. It's kind of nice to have a choice one way or another. You know, the runner-up is in person, and then virtual only is, you know, coming up as the least favorite option, which, you know, isn't a big surprise. All right, let's close down that poll. And let's bring it on back. And I'm really excited for this next section, Chris, because I really want to see some of these photos.
We had some great photos come in and from all different seasons. So we're super excited about this. So hopefully some of our photographers are in the audience, and I'm going to go through and announce the winners, but I also want to make sure that when we get to the end and we have a Q&A period, that if you are one of the photographers, that you raise your hand and let us know, and we'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves to everybody. So we launched the photo contest May 3rd and ran it through October 4th of 2021. And the purpose of this is to promote the remediation and restoration efforts happening in the St. Louis River Estuary. And the St. Louis River Alliance managed this in partnership with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and the Wisconsin DNR, and it was funded by the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. The categories were fish, wildlife, and birds in their natural habitat, and we had 23 submissions for that. Plants and insects, we had 20 for that. People, recreation, and harbor activities, there was 80 submissions for that. And the People's Choice, which was voted on by the public category. And I want to say that Alyssa Johnson, our development director, who is online tonight, is the one who, she was a project lead for this. So thank you, Alyssa, for a great job. It actually takes a lot to manage a photo contest like this. We had 5 judges, and their names are Barbara Crow, Alyssa Johnson, Barb Huberty, Anna Marie Genius, and Sarah Glessner. So thanks to our judges. First place in each category will receive $150 and be showcased on the SLRA website and Facebook. And second and third place will also be showcased. The People's Choice photo will be highlighted as the cover photo on the Facebook page, along with being published on the 2021 SLRAOC Remedial Action Plan. So without further ado, the plants, look at these great photos. The plants and insects category, third place goes to Samir Shahin, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing names correctly. This is the Duluth bee atop a flower. Beautiful. Second place goes to Julie Dieters, water lily. Also beautiful. And first place goes to Deanna Erickson, dragonfly exuvia on seeding wild rice at Duck Hunter Bay. Perfect. So congratulations, Deanna. So the next category is people, recreation, and harbor activities. Just look at these photos. You can see these. We'll post the link at the end where you can look at all of these photos. Third place goes to Tim Boulier, Canoeist paddling through Fond du Lac, Duluth. Second place goes to Heidi Beal, St. Louis River from the Swinging Bridge, spring thaw. Amazing. First place goes to Michael Anderson, Storybook Wonder, and it does look like a storybook. Congratulations, Michael. And again, Michael has helped us out at many events, coming and taking pictures for us. But the names of the photographers were not on the photos when the judges voted for them. So they did remain anonymous while they were being judged. Fish, wildlife, and bird. Third place goes to Chuck Shoden, Return of the Yellow-Headed Blackbird at Mud Lake. Second place goes to Bob Foucault, American White Pelican at Chambers Grove. We are so lucky to have these birds visit us in the spring. First place goes to Tone Coughlin, American White Pelican below the lower dam in Jay Cook State Park. And this is just an amazing photograph. Congratulations, Tone. Thank you for participating. And here's the link for the full gallery here. And we really had a great time on this and can't wait to look through these all again. And we will get the checks to the winners here. And please introduce yourselves at the end. We'll give you a chance to do so. Thank you again.
Hey, Chris.
That was great.
Yes.
I didn't notice, did we say the People's Choice Award?
I did not have that one in there. No. So who was that? Who did that go to?
That was to Tone as well, to that same.
Oh, okay. Cool. So yeah, that can be seen on that link as well. So sorry about that.
Good call out. Yeah, I will definitely be heading there and checking out the rest of them. Those are gorgeous, gorgeous photos. All right, so next up, I would like to introduce Matt Steiger. So Matt is from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. He's the St. Louis River AOC coordinator. So originally from Sheboygan, Wisconsin, he studied at UW Stevens Point, as did I. Started with the Wisconsin DNR in 2011, doing stream biology in the Southeast region, and area of concern work in the Sheboygan River AOC. So Matt has been the St. Louis River AOC coordinator since 2013 and currently manages the Wisconsin Point Bird Sanctuary Plover habitat. All right, welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Beth. Good evening, everyone, and so glad you could make it to our annual progress update on area of concern and St. Louis River topics. This year, we were excited to highlight some of the habitat projects that were part of the population's impairment. And if you attended last year, you will recall that we talked more about the species that were underneath the population's BUI, and this year we're highlighting the actual habitat projects that were done for certain species. So I will start out with the plover habitat on Wisconsin Point, and then we'll talk about somebody else will talk about the terns next. So I'm going to describe kind of the process and the people involved and the work that was done to rehabilitate the Wisconsin Point Bird Sanctuary. It was a site, and hopefully you can see this map all right, but the little purple polygon near Alois Bay and out on Wisconsin Point is the site we're talking about. It is a wildlife refuge, and as part of our population's impairment, as I stated, we decided that the area of concern program needed to develop some nesting habitat specifically for the endangered piping plover in this AOC. So working with endangered species, we definitely are blessed with a lot of partners that also can bring resources and expertise. But it also is a challenge because there's so few of the species in the region that an actual recovery of the population can take a very long time, which is beyond our area of concern timeline. So our philosophy here is if you build it, they will come, and the area of concern has held ourselves to that by creating this habitat. There was also a tern crib at this site. I do not believe it was used for nesting, and it kind of deteriorated over the years. The some very brief kind of background project history. We were trying to establish some more plover habitat on the lake side of Wisconsin Point along Shaper Beach, but that was very difficult given the lake conditions and managing the access there, as well as it's a very popular spot, and the birds are very sensitive at certain times, especially nesting, to some disturbance. So the bird sanctuary was already designated for plovers. It was part of a mitigation agreement that land was transferred over to Wisconsin DNR. And in 2017 is really when we started gaining some steam here on this particular project. And in a lot of partners, like I said, all the logos are here. And I'm sure some other people that helped along the way as well, but these are the major folks. So I just wanted to kind of give a visual representation of what it had looked like. The St. Louis River Alliance has been involved for quite a few years. We would do some redoing of the habitat by kind of tilling it and trying to get rid of vegetation, woody debris, but the site really just wasn't large enough, and it did have challenges with trying to keep that habitat in a good condition for the birds. That's when we decided to go down the path of designing a beneficial use of dredge material project to expand the site and make ideal habitat for plover. So like I said, a lot of planning went into this project. You know, it takes usually years to get through planning, design, permitting, all that stuff, sampling, and then it actually was built in a few months. So it's kind of crazy how these projects work out. But the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers did the bulk of the design work. We did field surveys, modeling for hydrodynamic and energy conditions. We had to identify and characterize a material source in the harbor. So Wisconsin DNR was in charge of looking over the data and making sure we had suitable source material, both in grain size and sediment quality. And then we used expertise from our federal partners for ideal habitat conditions. And like I said, there's quite a bit of permitting that goes into a project like this when you are placing dredge material to build land. So the habitat requirements that we were using was a minimum of a 2.5 acre dune beach habitat, open habitat, with a minimum of 0.5 kilometer of shoreline length. You have to have less than 10% slope, has to be 50 meters wide and at least 100 meters from a tree line. So very open type area. We want to keep minimal vegetation and woody debris, and we also enhance the dredge material with gravel, cobble, pans is what we call them, but it's kind of a mix of sanding and little stones that the plover really like to use for nesting. So our site went beyond these minimum requirements. We have a 14-acre site with almost 6 acres of nesting habitat qualifying with the setbacks from trees and all that stuff. We have about a kilometer of beach length and 50,000 square feet of cobble pans as built. The area that doesn't quite qualify is considered foraging habitat that the birds can still use and would likely use, but really the nesting requirements is what we want to see here. So like I said, it took a long time to get to this point, but in 2019, we started placing the material. It's a pretty interesting setup where a barge full of dredge material comes over to this sluice box. It's a hydraulic box that takes river water. You kind of dump dredge material into it. It pumps it over to the beach through the shallow water and sprays it up in a slurry onto the place you want the material. And, you know, the solids, they settle out really quickly and they start to build up. And so a bulldozer moves around that pipe and pushes around the material. They try and keep as much on site as possible. And after a while, you start to build up quite a bit of land. Now that the construction is done, we are in what we call the establishment phase of this brand new habitat. Wisconsin DNR owns the property and it manages it with a team of experts, federal, state, local folks, species experts. We have contracted with the Alliance to do the annual habitat assessments out there. Spring and fall, we do kind of a check on the quality of everything, and if there's action items for vegetation and woody debris and whatnot, we have metrics that trigger that work. We're also contracting tiger beetle monitoring because that's a food source and actually another endangered species that uses this type of habitat. They are recolonizing this area very well. We have kind of broken it up into 6 management zones to better kind of manage the exact habitats that we have on site. And then we also are planting some dune grass on the site in the non-nesting area. And that's UW Superior, Lake Superior Research Institute is doing that work. Another big piece of this site is access management and then outreach to you know, people that may want to use the site for birding and other purposes. This is all part of the long-term recovery and habitat maintenance for plovers. I think there was a presentation on this last year, but just a real quick reminder. We have a recovery goal of 150 pairs in the Great Lakes population. This site was specifically designed to last more than 25 years before it would need additional beach nourishment or anything of that sort. The Alliance does monitoring and nest protection through the Fish and Wildlife Service. And then we also have a site-specific management plan through the DNR for this site on a longer-term habitat purpose. And lastly, if needed, if there's nesting or issues with bird predation, we would work with the USDA for predator control for the endangered species. So with that, kind of the conclusion here is that we made a really nice size quality plover habitat in the western end of Lake Superior, which the plovers really didn't have. It fulfills the fish and wildlife population impairment plover requirement to remove the BUI. A future nesting pair here will contribute to long-term recovery. But like I said before, the AOC doesn't have that requirement of a nesting pair before we can move forward with impairment removal. And just a reminder, the site is a wildlife refuge. It is closed April 1st through August 24th for pipe and plover nesting. other than that, it is open, being a public lands, but during that time it's closed to really have an ideal spot for plovers. It is a great birding site outside of those dates though, so we have gotten a lot of good feedback, and potentially there will be some other access amenities in that area to help with that, even during the closed dates. And then just a kind of a ballpark cost here for the project was $4 million, and that came from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Before we launch the next poll, any questions for Matt? I throw that out there because I actually have a question. Matt, you mentioned the timeline for the AOC, not quite as long as the timeline it takes to kind of restore a population. Like, what's the rough time to actually restore a population? Like, is there one? Like an average?
I have no clue. Fish and Wildlife Service might have some, I'm sure it's so different and unique. I mean, there was a time that turkeys were rare in Wisconsin. There was a time that geese were rare. There has been population recovery in the US for many species, but it's probably so all over the place. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure minimum of decades for most.
Yeah. I was going to say the piping plover has been, this has been getting worked on since, the late 80s, early 90s, and they are slowly recovering, but it just takes a long time. The last time the piping plovers nested in our area was in 1987 or so. So it's just a long process.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of good stuff. All right. Well, let's go ahead and launch this last poll here, this last question that we have for you all. So this is a guess on your part. And actually, to help us kind of talk through this poll, I'm going to introduce our next couple speakers. So we have Gini Breidenbach and Natalie White. So Gini is the St. Louis River Restoration Program Manager of the Minnesota Land Trust. Her work is focused on habitat restoration and conservation planning in the St. Louis River Estuary. And then Natalie is a biologist and project manager at SEH. She works on a variety of projects, including wetland restoration, botanical survey, and environmental review. So I'm going to turn it over to you ladies to talk about this poll question.
Okay, thanks, Beth. And I'm Ginny. And so I'm interested to see what folks think, is how many species of birds use Interstate Island. Give us your best guess. And then through my presentation, we'll see how you did.
I'll go ahead and end the poll here in just a few seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, give us a good guess. I'll go ahead and get this closed for us, and we'll kind of see how we did by the time we get to the end.
Beth, you have a question in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. So Sally says, has the population of piping plover increased over the last 5 years? How much growth? So can we kind of put a number on that, or kind of gauge how much growth there has been over the last 5 years? And I'm thinking that might be a question for Matt.
Chris, do you know numbers? I know it has
Yes.
been slowly increasing. I do not know numbers. Do you know how many nesting pairs we have in the Great Lakes right now?
The last, I can't remember exactly, Sally, but I think it was up over 70 pairs. Maybe Fred Strand knows right offhand. Sumner is not with us right now, but I can look that up and maybe we can talk about it at the end, Sally. That's a good question. But they have not increased in our area in Western Lake Superior, but throughout the Great Lakes, yes, they for sure have in the last 5 years.
Great, thanks for the question, Sally. All right, well, I've captured those poll results. So take it away, Gini.
Okay, so it looks like most of you actually answered the question correctly with the largest number of 20 or greater species. That actually is the correct answer. And I'm wondering, as some of you have seen my presentation previously, and so I already had that info, but so looking forward to stepping through this with you as soon as I see my navigation showing up on the screen. My little arrows aren't there yet.
I can see them on my.
Oh, there you can see them. Oh gosh,
they're really faint.
Put my glasses on and then I can see what.
They're very faint.
They are very faint. Oh my gosh, they're hiding in this slide. Can you advance to the next slide and maybe, oh, it's there, the background. I got it. Thank you very much. Okay, so Interstate Island project. I'm happy to be presenting on this project, and I do want to recognize two other folks, Melissa Scholand at Minnesota DNR and Natalie White, who you will also be seeing in this presentation. I was responsible for managing the design and construction of the project, and Melissa was the lead at Minnesota DNR responsible, and Natalie was our design firm project manager. So Interstate Island is a 6-acre island on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's this tiny little dot in this figure, right near the Blatnick Bridge. It was created in the 1930s as a dredge spoil disposal site by the Corps of Engineers. And since 1983, it's been jointly managed by Wisconsin and Minnesota DNRs as a wildlife management area. It is home to one of 2 common tern colonies remaining in the Lake Superior watershed. Whoops, can we go back? What happened? Not quite down there. Ah! Go back 2 slides. Thank you. So it is also designated as federally designated as critical piping plover habitat. So that designation came into play as we were designing our project. And this is an action required for the beneficial use impairment number 2, restoring common tern habitat at the island in order to remove that degraded fish and wildlife populations BUI for the AOC. Okay, Beth. Since I can't see my arrows, I'll ask you to advance. There, thank you. So nesting on Interstate Island, approximately half of the Lake Superior common tern population nests on the island. And there is a goal from the Wisconsin Common Tern Recovery Plan of 200 pairs for the colony, and 0.8 to 1.1 young per year to be nested. Whoops, now we're going too fast. Let me go back. And 1.8 to 1.1 young per breeding pair are desired on the island. So the common tern population has been monitored there since 1977. And banding began on the island in 1989. So we have a really nice long-term data set for the population on the island. Okay, go ahead. Interstate Island is also home to 20,000 ring-billed gulls, which is quite a large number, as well as some herring gulls and Canada geese. So why do we need restoration on the island? It's because of a significant increase in Lake Superior water levels that happened around 2014. You can see the time series of water levels in the lake. And around 2014, as it's shown in this figure, there's a big bump up in water levels that has been sustained since that time. This image is showing the Interstate Island in 2014 before that water level increase happened. And the conditions on this island at this time were desirable for the tern population in terms of the space available for the gulls that also nest there, as well as sort of the elevations and the shoreline conditions. So this 2014 became a reference or our design condition for the island moving forward. By 2019, those increased water levels had flooded out almost half of the island and the areas that the gulls nest, which means that the gulls were really crowding and providing pressure on the common tern colony. In 2015, partners developed, oops, go back. Sorry, Beth. In 2015, partners did an emergency repair to elevate the tern nesting area in the middle of the island. That rectangular area is the managed tern nesting area. But even then, that berm that was put around it and the nesting area, by 2019, those were in danger. And so the restoration was necessary to prevent future flooding to the nesting area. Okay, now you can proceed. So our project objectives really centered around securing the habitat for the common tern colony, restoring the island's size and increasing its elevation to protect against flooding, and stabilizing the island perimeter to prevent scour and habitat loss. These were our two primary objectives for the project. Okay. And now to introduce you to the elements of the construction, I'm going to show you this quick video that was produced by our design team at SEH. So the common terns are inhabiting Interstate Island with a whole colony of ring-billed gulls and some herring gulls. And at the current time, because the area is so flooded, there's too much pressure from all the gulls living on the island, and they're actually eating baby tern chicks. This project will involve raising the nesting colony, the managed portion of the island where the terns are nesting, so that it's at a safe elevation for them, as well as filling some of the flooded areas internal to the island. Our plan then is to actually do an expansion of the island to enable us to achieve 5.5 acres of stable upland habitat above our design high water level.
The design in this case is thinking about what are sustainable slopes for the island that aren't going to erode but are also going to be appropriate for the birds. What is an appropriate footprint for the island? You know, there are trade-offs between the size of the island and the likely stability of the island, depending on how big and where.
A project like this is really wonderful because it's an on-the-ground demonstration of how you can make a big difference, in this case for a special species of birds. And now I'll let Natalie take over to talk about the construction aspects of the project.
Yeah, thank you, Gini. And thanks everybody for being here. I'm happy to talk about our work on this project. It's been just one of the most interesting projects that I've had the pleasure of working on. And I wanted to talk with folks here a bit about from the engineering design perspective, what some of the interesting challenges were and why we did things the way we did. So Minnesota Land Trust hired us to put together the engineering design, and we ended up doing it in, oh, I'm going to pop back for just a second, in 3 phases. And the reason for that was we have some really important constraints on the timing of the work that can happen on the island. As you can imagine, there's the environmental windows to think about of when work can happen, and also be thoughtful of avoiding fisheries date restrictions to protect spawning fish. We have to avoid doing work during the active season of the terns on the island. We have to be out of there before they nest and make sure that we're not disturbing them. And then this project also accepted dredge material from the Army Corps of Engineers for their navigational dredge program, similar to what Matt was speaking about earlier. And they have a tight timeline as well for when they do their design for the coming year of where the navigation channel needs to be dredged. And so we have to, in order to accept that material, be working with their timeline for when their contractor is going to be out doing the work. So that meant first we had kind of a first emergency phase in spring of 2020. And here land trust contractor JF Brennan is bringing sand from a gravel pit out to the island. This work wanted to happen before it would be possible to get core dredge material. And they can also, meet some very precise specs for the material that's coming out. So in the spring, this is April, they're bringing the material out and they're getting it placed on those flooded areas of the island before the terns arrive in the spring. So they're working on this in April. They have to be out of there before the first terns would come in early May. So they couldn't do the nesting area yet. We didn't want any chance that there would be construction going on or anything halfway finished when the terns start to arrive. So then this video shows the next phase. So in fall, after the terns are gone, JF Brennan came back and raised up the nesting area. And you'll see some video of the new fence and the new, here we go. The new nesting area with protective fence, help keep the gulls out. And this video is taken while the Army Corps' contractor for navigational dredging is bringing material out to the island. And that was, by the time they come out and they're sending out material, it's getting kind of late in the season. So they're trying to get finished before things freeze up. As you can imagine, you need safe conditions to work in the harbor. And then also you're working with a lot of wet sand, which once that freezes, that's difficult to do. So they did that.
Sorry, Natalie, to interrupt you. There were a couple of questions that came in, and one was kind of targeted. Can you explain why you brought in sand from a quarry instead of using like dredge materials?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there are two reasons. One being that first, you saw from, Gini was speaking and she showed the picture of the 2019 flooded areas of the island. There was a really urgent need to get more space on the island. And that meant doing it in spring of 2020. And that just wasn't a time of the year that would work for receiving material from the Army Corps.
Okay, thanks for that. And then there's one last question, if you want to tackle it quick. How does the protective fence keep the gulls out? A couple of people have wondered that.
Yeah, so what you saw there isn't the complete setup. There would be some more wires over the top. But I would differ. I know there are a few people on the meeting tonight who know better than I do exactly how that setup keeps the gulls from landing in the tern nesting area.
So I can answer that question. So what you saw in the last video of the chain link fence that's now there, used to be chicken wire, that's now chain link, that larger fencing structure provides sort of the overall structure of the fence. And then every year in the spring, Fred Strand, who I believe is also on the line, goes out before the terns return and strings some actual string across that fencing to make a string grid. So the strings end up being maybe about 24 inches apart. And that string grid is what keeps the gulls out. The gulls aren't able to actually maneuver well to be able to get through that grid where the terns have a much more maneuverability, and they're able to kind of get in there between those string grids. And so that string grid is really what's intended to keep the gulls out of there.
Really interesting. Thanks for that.
And there's also another comment now, I'll get to this now because I knew it was going to come up. So this year Fred also put, it's a kind of a test of this approach, some snow fencing across, it's really just a portion of the nesting area. And that is because the gulls that return early before the terns come back in May, the gulls get in there before the string grid is up because they come earlier, and they start to nest within the nesting area. And once a gull has established a nest within the nesting area, even though there's a permit to destroy the nests within the tern nesting area, if the nest is destroyed, the gull wants to keep coming back to that very same spot. And those are the gulls that actually have caused the most predation on the tern colony. So putting the snow fence up is actually intended to keep those gulls from nesting there before the string grid is up, and it's a new approach to try to actually reduce some more of the predation that happens.
Fantastic. And there's another question that just came in that might be along the same lines. Can you explain what the thick black lines are and what purpose they serve?
Yeah, I can take that one because that kind of ties into my very last bit on the slide here.
Yeah, go for it.
For the final spring 2021 work. So the Army Corps contractor on the left image in mid-November of last year is still bringing out material. They get that finished up, and then it's not, they're still, their primary purpose is to do the work of the navigational dredge and getting the material to their placement location. It's not really within their scope of work to do like a final grade and kind of some more precise work that the island needs. So then that last work was done in spring of 2021. And those thick black lines are rock veins on the surface that are intended to reduce wind erosion across the island. Because as we were looking at what are potential issues for the future stability of the island, wave action really did not come out to be a huge one. It's probably the first thing that people might think about, but that island is pretty well protected by Rice's Point from the, the big winds and waves coming off the lake. But for what's essentially a big pile of sand, wind erosion is more of a concern, at least initially. And so that's what those rock veins are there to help break up the wind across the surface and keep the sand in place. And that's the entirety of my story for Interstate Island, and I'll hand it back to Gini.
Thanks, Natalie. Yeah, can you advance me one, since I can't seem to be able to do that? Okay, so to just talk a little bit about the monitoring and the numbers of birds, an important part of our effort is actually looking at over time what's happening with the tern colony and our restoration, as well as doing some additional monitoring that I'll talk about in just a minute. So these, not to get too data heavy in this presentation, but these slides represent those two things that we monitor in the population against the targets in the Wisconsin Recovery Plan. So the one on the left shows the peak nest count, and that goal of 200 pairs or 200 nests is shown there in green. And you can see that in recent years, those numbers have declined since from numbers that they had been in the past. But we are hopeful, and well, let's say we're definitely hopeful, but we're also interested to see how what the monitoring data shows in the next several years after the restoration. There's of course other influences on the tern population other than their habitat at Interstate Island. So it's not necessarily a direct correlation to that work, but we're excited to see what those results are. On the right, you can see this is the measure of the number of young that come out of each nest. And those numbers have actually been pretty good relative to the range in the goal that's set by that recovery plan in the last few years. Okay. So the last thing I just wanted to talk about for a moment is a really exciting part of this project. So as I told you in the beginning, the intent of this work from the area of concern standpoint is really this common tern. Whoops, can we go back one slide? Seems to be some kind of magic happening. So really the objective of this project was to stabilize the habitat for the common tern colony as part of the area of concern work. But there are also some broader interests in the work. And because we had to design the shoreline of the project for the piping plover habitat requirements because of that federal designation, we had the opportunity to really consider what other creatures might be using the island. And so we have a monitoring program that's going on with the Natural Resources Research Institute are doing shorebird monitoring, weekly in-person surveys, and then a series of trail cams around the edge of the island from spring till fall. And some exciting news is we now know that there are, as of the first 2 years of monitoring, 16 different shorebird species that have been identified using the island. And some other fun facts about that is that multiple species can be seen on the island at once. This is a figure, or excuse me, a photo of 5 different species seen there at one time. And we're also seeing multiples of the same species on the island at once. So it's exciting to know that during the spring, and particularly in fall migration, after the terns and gulls have gone, that there are plenty of other birds that are finding this habitat useful in the estuary migration corridor. So it's an exciting piece. And then my last slide is to recognize all of the folks involved. This was a project that we completed the design and construction in a period of 2 years. All the permitting was a very tight time frame and accommodated receiving about 40,000 cubic yards of material from the Corps of Engineers Operation and Maintenance Dredge program. It was no small feat to get this project done in that timeline, and lots of people were involved. And so thanks to all of you who are on the line that were part of it. All right. And now I'm not sure if we have time for questions now or if okay.
Plenty of time.
Okay. So I see that Barb is mentioning in the comments that in the chat that Fred Strand is the tern monitor extraordinaire. That is very true. And there he is with Fred and Annie, who are our tern monitors here, monitoring folks and experts in this picture.
Great. Any other questions, folks? Feel free to type them right into the chat. Yeah, a lot of good updates there. It looks very hopeful. A lot of good stuff. All right. Well, I think we're good on questions at the moment. So thank you, Gini, and thank you, Natalie. Good to have you both here. Question just popped in. This could be for almost any of us. How can the general public help to extend this project?
Ooh, gosh, that's a really good question. So this is a wildlife management area that's really should have limited access by the public. So one of the things is if you see folks that are using the island when they shouldn't been or shouldn't be, is that you could provide some education to them if you happen to be out there of like, hey, wait, this is a really important place for birds. I don't think that happens too often, but it's something that we've considered because we've created this really beautiful new sand area, and it looks like at certain times of the year very inviting for picnics or sand volleyball or something until the gulls come, and then you really don't want to be there. But I think recognizing the importance of shorebird habitat in our estuary is really important. This piping, and we're highlighting it here with the piping plover efforts and the shorebirds. And Interstate Island is a place that doesn't have much intervention from people. So I guess I would say the support would be in general for recognizing the importance of how our actions influence the ability for the shorebirds to use these important areas in the habitat. Yep, Fred is commenting by telling people you know what the island is managed for and why. That's true. Yeah.
And another question. Go ahead, Chris.
I can also not specific to the Interstate Island project here, but actually you could, Beth, if you wanted to pop out of we don't need any more slides right now. and maybe we could just transition into a different screen and see people's faces, and we can move into more of a, a Q&A session, ask 3 questions. But the St. Louis River Alliance does have volunteer opportunities, especially in the summer. And we do monitor the Minnesota and Wisconsin point for piping plover. So if somebody wants to be involved in doing some volunteer monitoring, we do offer that in the spring, and you could contact us or watch for our emails in the spring where we do some training and stuff like that for piping plover monitoring. So that might be an opportunity. And there's outreach that we used to do more outreach, but the funding hasn't really been covering a lot of outreach lately. But we try to let the public know, how important those habitat sites are and what the best use for them is and how to reduce our impact on them. So you can contact us in the spring in middle of April or so, or you can watch for our emails about that. So
Great. And the last question that came into the chat, looks like some of the videos were shot with drones. How do the birds react to drones? Are they paying attention to them?
Go ahead, Natalie.
Well, I can just speak to the couple of drone flights that SEH did. We did do them outside of the tern nesting season, but there were gulls out there, I think possibly for both of those flights, and the drone is actually about 200 feet up. And at that height, the gulls at least didn't seem to have much of a reaction to it.
that's a good question.
Mhm. Great. Any other questions? And while we're waiting for anyone to type in another question, anyone who was part of the photo contest, if you want to give a little wave, love to see if any of you folks are
Yeah.
here.
We'd love to see your face, or just acknowledge, that you participated in the photo contest. So
Yay.
thank you, Naomi. Anybody else? I'm not seeing anybody else, but
Okay.
Barb, you had,
Yeah, can you hear
Mhm.
me?
yep.
Yeah, I just thought maybe Matt could talk about whether there was going to be similar shorebird monitoring at the piping plover site, and perhaps Melissa can explain how the site will be managed as a WMA going into the future.
As far as bird monitoring goes, so outside of the plover monitoring, there's quite a bit of bird monitoring going on in Eloise Bay right now. The Natural Resource Research Institute is doing monitoring at multiple sites out there, and the plover site is one of them. We also did do trail camera monitoring on the site, and this last summer to capture shorebird usage, and we're getting through those photos, but we think we might modify that a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I can touch on long-term management of Interstate Island as a WMA. So Interstate Island is a wildlife management area that's been jointly managed by both Minnesota and Wisconsin DNRs. So part of this project, and something that SEH was also involved with, was creating a long-term maintenance and management plan for Interstate Island. So that's a plan that the states will jointly be implementing, which includes annual monitoring, not only of the species using Interstate Island, but monitoring the island itself. So that includes going out, looking at water levels, looking at shoreline stability, nesting area structures, managing vegetation, managing gulls. So we've got a very comprehensive plan that will help us, you know, maintain and manage the habitat for long-term success.
Great, thanks, Melissa. And checking in to make sure that all the questions were answered. So if anyone would like to unmute to ask a question, please feel free.
I'll ask one.
You gotta unmute.
I did. We, in the past, we've talked a lot about fishing on the St. Louis River and the walleye spawning, and we don't seem to be hearing much about that anymore. Is the cleanup of the river still progressing at the same sort of rapid rate that it did in the years past? And are walleye now safer to eat out of the river than ever? Or what is the direction going there?
Is that Matt? Is that, I see, I can't see your face, Will, but I know that's you. Matt, is that something that you can answer?
Sorry. I thought people would be better off not seeing my face.
Oh, we're good. We love to see you.
Yeah, I can address some parts of that probably pretty well. So the area of concern work is continuing to move at a pretty rapid pace. You know, as the agencies and the Alliance has tried to, you know, portray that the last 5-6 years. I mean, we're in full implementation mode of our remedial action plan projects. Many of the projects left or remaining are the remediation or cleanup projects. We do continue to see sediment quality improvements after those projects. But the contaminants in the food chain is something we're still working on understanding some of the details of. So I mean, it's hard for me to make any sort of bold statement, but you know, with cleanup projects continuing, the amount of contamination in the river is definitely being reduced. So we will continue to monitor fish tissue and provide consumption advice as those concentrations change over time.
There's still fish consumption advisories, especially on the walleye, I understand. So, but if you talk to, you know, some of the fishermen, they're certainly catching a lot of fish. It's just that, you know, the consumption advisories are still there. So Sally, I have an answer for you about the piping plover population that you asked earlier. And prior to 1990, it looks like there was about 800 pairs of Great Lakes piping plover. And in around 1990, it dropped to about 13 only. And so since the early 1990s, we now have about 75 to 80 pairs in the Great Lakes. And even in Green Bay on Cat Island, which is a man-made project, they had birds nesting in 2016, which really surprised them. And so they have increased. There's been a couple of years where we didn't get some new pairs and stuff, I know, but we have a pretty active population over on Long Island in the Apostle Islands. So in Sleeping Bear Dunes is one of the largest area where they're at, but yes, so they are increasing. It does take a long time. So you can look up more answers for that in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And there's some other really good websites out there that had that information on it, but it's looking hopeful. It just takes a long time. So does anybody else have any other questions? Will, you're muted. Will, I think you're muted, so I didn't hear what you said. Sorry. I'm not a good lip reader.
I was just gonna say that the St. Louis, I've been a member of the St. Louis River Citizens Action Committee years ago, and you've come a long ways, and you're just doing a wonderful job, and thank you for a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Will. We appreciate you both, Sally and you, and all of our members. And I also, I see now that I'm seeing the full screen, I see a few of our board members. So thanks a lot, Judy and Libby, and who else was here as a board member? One of our board members.
Andrea.
Oh, Andrea.
Rick has been around for years.
Yeah. Yep. Rick Guitar has been around and involved in the area of concern since the very beginning. So we thank all the people that there's a lot of people on this call who have worked in this area of concern for many, many years. So we really thank all of you, all the agencies that you work for and the organizations and companies. And you know, we're not ready to go yet, but I just want to thank everybody for showing up. And, you know, we do see some of the same faces all the time, and we thank you. And this time I'm seeing a lot of new names. So we're really appreciative that you came along, and there's some really good information out there that we talked about today. And the Alliance has been working with the area of concern coordinators from the different agencies for many years. And I can tell you that there are people who care about the area. They live here, they care about it, and they're always trying to do the right thing. So we really like to connect the public to the coordinators so that you can talk to them face to face and ask questions and get some, you know, things cleared up that you might have questions on. So, and we also hope that everybody got a chance to get out on the river this last summer, and even during the winter, and really get to experience a new connection. And some of the things that we're able to see now are due to a cleaner river. So we're super happy about that. And all the ways that we're able to interact with the river are changing over the years because the river is cleaner. And that means, for us, it means a lot of higher quality of life for us, and higher quality of life for the animals and the fish and everybody who relies on the river for our life. So I hope that you guys all get involved in the river in some way and get a chance to connect. So Barb has a question.
Well, let me start with Carmelita Nelson. She has a question that perhaps Rick can answer. She's asking, other than the wild rice restoration, how are tribal communities involved?
Well, of course, every single BUI has technical teams that advise on that particular BUI, and there's tribal staff that are involved in those technical teams. Our cultural people are always involved in a lot of these projects because they require a cultural person. Our tribal historic preservation office requires to be signed off on a lot of these projects. So that's involved. And so there's a lot of give and take along there. And our tribal council is informed a lot on these projects, and they're informed, and the community is notified as to what's going on all the time so that they can provide input as needed. So.
And Rick serves as a coordinator, and his supervisor is on our leadership team, and one of his coworkers is involved on the natural resources damages assessment work for Superfund sites like the US Steel Spirit Lake site. The other thing I just wanted to reiterate for people, I made a note in the chat that if you go to the agenda that Chris sent out, she embedded 3 hyperlinks in it. One gets you to the story maps for the habitat restoration sites for both Wisconsin and Minnesota. Another gets you to the remediation site story map for Minnesota sites. And the third one is an EPA site that they've established for the US Steel Spirit Lake site. And they are posting weekly updates to their photo gallery. But on the 2 story maps, we've just embedded links on the more information page that will take you to see what the Minnesota fact sheet is. It's a new one that we've developed and updated, along with our timeline for the entire program that shows everything that's been done since 1987, as well as the work that remains to be done before we delist. So we update those every October. So if you're ever interested in looking at the details, you can download those and look at them directly. And also on those sites, you can see more details about each of the construction projects.
Thanks, Barb. Is there any more questions popping up in the chat at all, or anybody else want to have any more comments? Any of our presenters have any more comments they want to give, or nothing? Alyssa, do you have something? Okay. I want to thank Alyssa again, our development director, and all the work that you put into this event and the photo contest. And we will be sending out your prize money here this week. So thanks everybody for participating in that. I hope everybody gets a chance to go on our website and take a look at the gallery. They're just beautiful photos, and you will be seeing those out. The agencies in the Alliance will be using those photos in their promotions for the area of concern work. And so you'll probably be seeing those photos coming up. If you would like a National Water Trail map, you can go to our office in the DeWitt Sites building. Outside of our office, we have a stack of them, and there's also a list on our website where you can get those. We are putting out a new map for this next paddling season. So that'll be out in the spring sometime. And hopefully also we have some really beautiful videos on our website for you to look at and just really help you connect with the river. And again, all of the stuff that we're able to do right now in the National Water Trail are because of all the work that's gone into the river. So thanks for all your help. There's so many people in the online tonight in the event that have worked on these projects for many years. So thank you, everybody. So anybody else have any final comments?
Tomorrow, I'll send a follow-up email with all the links that were in the chat as well. And then if it's not tomorrow, it'll be Friday, because we also recorded this. And so we'll put that up on the website, and then you'll be able to share it with anybody who couldn't come. So keep an eye out for that either tomorrow or Friday.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Yep.
And this is Barb. I just have a curious question. We had someone participating tonight all the way from Cary, North Carolina, and I'm curious why someone from Cary, North Carolina is interested in the St. Louis River Estuary. Is that person still on?
I'm not.
I don't see her. It looked like Melissa Van Way, but I don't see her on here.
Oh, she gets the prize for the farthest attendance.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had Mark Hirschfield, who was
Oh,
the
really?
former AOC coordinator for Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. He's now in Olympia, Washington. He was on earlier.
Oh, I didn't see his name. I can only get so many names up, but yeah, Mark was the AOC coordinator when I first started, so I know him.
Well, yeah, he was the one that got the grant for the implementation framework that we're all talking about today. So it's kind of fun to see him on.
Yeah. Well, again, let's give Beth a round of applause for the great job producing this event. And emceeing everything and keeping things smooth. Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Chris.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So it looks like we're gonna end early tonight, but look for, we've got, the Alliance has some events coming up soon, so you can check our event calendar. We've got some fun stuff coming up if you like to drink beer, or if you just like to hang out at Ursa Minor. We're gonna have an event there in December, so take a look at that. So thanks a lot, everybody. It was great connecting with you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Have a good
everyone.
night.
Thanks, Beth.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.